The day my fertility clinic called, I thought they were confirming my transfer date. Instead, they told me my embryos had already been used, implanted, in someone else. And the someone else was my best friend. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never imagined checking the locks behind them? Because I did. And that mistake almost cost me everything. But here's the thing about betrayal. If you survive the shock, you get very, very strategic. My name is Alina. I was 34 years old when the doctor told me chemotherapy had destroyed my chances of conceiving naturally. The cancer diagnosis had been terrifying, but the infertility? That felt like a quiet funeral no one attended. Before treatment began, my husband Daniel and I made the responsible decision to freeze embryos. Insurance for the future. A promise to ourselves that once I was in remission, we would finally build the family we'd been planning for 5 years. 3 embryos. 3 microscopic miracles. Daniel held my hand during every appointment. He told me we'd beat cancer together. He told me nothing mattered more than my health. He said all the right things. My best friend, Claire, was there too. She drove me to chemo when Daniel had meetings. She brought soup. She slept on my couch when the nausea was too much. She was my sister in every way except blood. That's what makes betrayal so efficient. It hides in loyalty. 6 months into remission, I called the clinic to schedule our embryo transfer consultation. There was a pause on the other end. Then the nurse said something that made my entire body go cold. "Mrs. Lawson, your embryos were transferred 8 weeks ago." Transferred? I laughed. That's impossible. Another pause. According to our records, consent forms were signed. You and Mr. Lawson authorized the procedure. I don't remember driving to the clinic. I don't remember parking. I remember sitting across from the medical director staring at paperwork with my forged signature. Except it wasn't forged. It was mine. Scanned from previous documents. Copied. Legally replicated. And the recipient? Claire Mitchell, my best friend. Implanted with my embryos. Carrying my biological child. With my husband's consent. I didn't confront them immediately. Shock is loud. Strategy is quiet. I went home. Daniel was making dinner. Claire was there too. She stood up too quickly when I walked in. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. That's when I saw it. The subtle curve. 8 weeks. Everything okay? Daniel asked. I smiled. Oh, everything is perfect. Because now I knew. And knowledge is power. Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own life. I watched. I listened. Claire moved into our guest room. Temporarily. Daniel suddenly worked from home more often. One night I stood outside the guest room door and heard it. "You think she'll ever find out?" Claire whispered. "She's too weak right now," Daniel replied. "By the time the baby's born, it'll be ours. She won't fight." Ours. The arrogance was breathtaking. They believed my illness made me fragile. They mistook recovery for weakness. Big mistake. Here's what they didn't know. When we froze those embryos, I insisted on one clause in our agreement. No embryo could be transferred without my in-person medical consent after remission clearance. It was my lawyer's idea after the diagnosis. Daniel had signed it too. The clinic's error? They processed scanned consent without verifying medical clearance, which meant the transfer was unauthorized, which meant custody was legally mine. Claire wasn't a surrogate. She was an unlawful gestational carrier. And unlawful changes everything. I hired the best reproductive law attorney in the state. Quietly. Ruthless. Precise. Emergency injunction filed. Cease and desist served to the clinic. Notice of custodial claim prepared. We waited. Timing matters. If we acted too early, they could argue reconciliation. Too late, and emotional bonding arguments would complicate public perception. So we waited until Claire was 32 weeks pregnant, very visibly attached, very publicly celebrating her miracle. That's when we served them, at her baby shower, in front of 40 guests. The knock at the door silenced the room. A process server handed Claire a thick envelope. Daniel went pale before she even opened it. "What is this?" someone asked. Claire's hands shook as she read. "Injunction, custodial enforcement, genetic claim." I stepped forward calmly. "That baby," I said clearly, "is biologically mine. And the transfer was unauthorized. You are carrying my child." Gasps. Daniel tried to speak. The server handed him his own envelope. Divorce papers. Fraud claims. Emotional damages. I'd had months to prepare. They'd had months to fantasize. Fantasy loses to documentation every time. Security was present at the hospital when Claire went into labor. Court order in hand. The judge ruled that custody would default to the genetic mother pending investigation, which was me. Claire screamed that she'd carried the baby. Daniel demanded paternal rights. He received child support calculations instead. And when my son was placed in my arms, the room felt very quiet. Claire sobbed. Daniel cursed. But the nurse looked at the paperwork and said only one thing. Legal mother confirmed. 3 words. Months of betrayal erased. Daniel lost his job after the fraud investigation hit the clinic. Claire's reputation shattered when the story leaked. Friends distanced themselves. Their relationship collapsed within 6 months. Turns out, relationships built on theft don't survive consequences. As for me, I moved across the country. New house. New life. My son's first word was mama. Not Claire. Not shared. Not stolen. Mine. They thought they could rewrite my future while I was fighting cancer. Instead, I rewrote theirs. Slowly. Legally. Permanently. Sometimes revenge isn't screaming. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's waiting until everyone is comfortable before you pull the foundation out from under them. And trust me, that's far more satisfying.